Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from somewhere in Greece on August 10th, 2025. Several years ago, I joined with dozens of anti-war activists from across Canada to form an association of political disruptors. We called our association Disruption Network Canada. The primary tactic of Disruption Network Canada is to confront warmongering politicians in public spaces and to call them out for their complicity in violations of international law and human rights. We always conduct these disruptions non-violently, but that doesn't prevent the police or private security from sometimes using force to silence us. And I'm sometimes asked by friend and foe alike, why do you employ this tactic? Well, to help answer this question, I've invited onto Reason to Resist one of the true masters of anti-war activism, Medea Benjamin. For the few members of our audience who might not know of Medea, she's a co-founder of Codepink, Women for Peace, which is an anti-war organization based in the United States. Medea also co-founded the fair trade advocacy group Global Exchange. And I first met Medea at the World Social Forum in Montreal in 2016, but this is the first time we've had her on Reason to Resist, and I'm just thrilled to be able to speak with you today. Medea, thank you for joining us.
Great to be on with you, Dimitri. Thank you.
So before I begin to ask you about your activism, Medea, I'd like to show our audience a video of you being arrested last year after engaging in a disruption at the U.S. Congress.
They're talking and they're saying that the U.S. budget of $1 trillion for militarism isn't enough for all the threats we face in the world. You know why we face threats in the world? Because we support genocide. That's why we face threats. And if we stop supporting genocide, if we stopped, then we wouldn't face these threats in the world. So I say,
Yeah, why are you doing this in the hallway? Excuse me, why are you doing this here?
So isn't it ironic that the person who speaks out for peace and international law and respect for U.S. law is getting treated like this in the hallway?
What?
And obviously such a great threat to the United States. Probably will be about 100 lawyers signing on to this letter talking about how the U.S. is violating Leahy laws, is violating the State Department's old laws.
So Medea, I'm no cop, but it didn't look to me like you were packing a pistol in that picture. So I'm curious to know, Medea, first of all, your just general reaction to, how you were arrested. And secondly, were you actually charged with anything?
Well, first of all, it was so ridiculous because these officers know us. I mean, we're in the halls every day in Congress, and they know that we're a peace group. We're nonviolent. That's our whole raison d'etre, is to stop violence. And so to treat me like that was so absolutely ridiculous. When we get arrested, it depends what we did, where we did it, but we do get handcuffed, taken to the jail, processed. Sometimes it's just a few hours and you have a fine. Sometimes you have to wait, stay overnight and see a judge the next day. The worst part for us is that sometimes they give us a stay away order that you can't go to this Capitol building, and that really limits us. So that's the scariest part for us about getting arrested, is their ability to keep us from doing the work we want to do, which is confronting our elected officials.
And so in that particular instance, were you actually charged with anything, or did they just liberate you after?
Oh, no, I was charged. I was charged with the disruption and had to pay a fine. And
so it was not an indictable offense. It was just a minor infraction, basically.
No, but let me tell you, Dimitri, these things come back to bite you when you go places like Canada, because it was precisely these kinds of arrests that in the U.S. are a minor offense. It's a misdemeanor. In Canada, you have a different ranking. And so these minor offenses have kept me out of Canada on many occasions because they treat them as a higher level of offense.
And our country is surely the worst for it, Medea. I can assure you, we need more disruptors like you north of the border.
They wanted me to pay a $10,000 bond just to come into Canada to give a talk.
And was that under the current government, the Liberal government, or was that the 10 years ago
That
or
was,
something under the
yeah,
Conservatives?
that was 10 years ago. And luckily, we've got that taken care of. But on four different occasions, I was not allowed into Canada for these
And so,
very
wow.
offenses in Congress.
Have you been, if you don't mind my asking, have you been barred from other countries because of these infractions, or only Canada?
Nowhere. It is only Canada, because Canada is the only country that the US shares this database with. So it is only Canada.
Wow. And so, approximately how many times have you been arrested in the course of doing these disruptions, Medea? Do you even know? That's the number.
Well, I was arrested many times before I started doing the work in Washington, D.C., when I did economic justice kind of work, arrested outside the headquarters of corporations and that kind of thing. In the halls of Washington, D.C., I try to limit the number of times I get arrested because I don't want the ban. And so if you it used to be you could get arrested any number of times, but now they've limited, you can only be arrested 3 times in 2 years without then getting a ban. So it's very tough, and I have to try to walk a very fine line. Plus, we
Mhm.
ask new people who have not been arrested to come and be the voices, because, for them, it's just a fine. For us, it could be a lot more.
So, to cut to the chase, why do you employ this tactic, and why do you think it's effective and something that activists should be willing to do in appropriate circumstances?
Well, first, let me say that we only get arrested mostly when we are speaking out in the hearings or doing a sit-in in the office and the officers give us a warning and we refuse to move. Or a lot of groups come in to do a civil disobedience act in the Capitol. Otherwise, when we are running after the members of Congress or just attending a hearing and oftentimes, kind of moaning and groaning and wearing our shirts that say, Free Palestine or whatever it is, we don't get arrested. And I think the most important thing that we do is expose just how horrific the majority of people who are supposed to represent us are. And I have found that to be something I didn't know. People didn't know this, Dimitri. So when we follow and ask somebody about, why are we spending billions of dollars of our tax money on Israel when you have all these problems at home, and you talk about America first, and they answer us and say things like, the Bible tells me that I have to support Israel. I mean, people are shocked when they hear that because they didn't elect their representative for their religious beliefs. They represented them to help their constituency. And so these kind of exposures or just how callous, I mean, the head now of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs is a guy, Brian Mast, who lost his 2 legs in a fight we shouldn't have been in Afghanistan. And he says basically that there are no innocent Palestinians, that even the young children are terrorists as well. And so exposing him is very important for the American people to hear. And not just the American people. It's funny, I just returned from a trip to London, and I get off the plane and I'm trying to get on the tube. And the conductor is there and he sees me and he says, "Oh, Codepink. Oh my God, we love what you do. We never knew how corrupt your government was until we started seeing your videos." So,
Yeah.
it's exposing them in the global limelight as well.
Since we're on the subject of shocking congressional behavior, I'm sure you're aware, Medea, there was I think it's a member of the House of Representatives by the name of Randy Fine, who
Oh,
recently expressed his full-blown support for the starvation of the children of Gaza. As far as you know, have there been any consequences for this scoundrel in the United States Congress, or has he basically gotten away with it?
well, first of all, even before he got into Congress, he called the kafia a terrorist rag. He gets into Congress and he uses the hashtag bomb away and starve away. And he says the most horrific things. So we have been pushing the Democrats to say censure him. That's the least you can do. And so far, there have been no consequences. A Democrat can say the tiniest thing that is interpreted like a wonderful Congresswoman, Delia Ramirez, that said she was proud to be a Guatemalan and a U.S. citizen now, and they want to deport her for saying that she was proud to be Guatemalan. When the Democrats say anything that can be misinterpreted, they go after them full on. But people like Randy Fine, he gets away with it. And, Dimitri, it's so funny. He is so crass that even AIPAC took him off of their roster of candidates because he's embarrassing even to AIPAC.
That was mind-blowing. I saw that myself.
Yeah, you saw he was just a couple of days ago in Israel with not Netanyahu, but also with the congressional delegation that was there. So they weren't afraid to sit next to Netanyahu, and they weren't afraid to sit next to Randy Fine, who was right behind him.
So sticking, Medea, with the theme of shocking behavior by politicians, I'd like to show our audience another clip of a more recent interaction you had. I believe this was also in the Congress. Let's have a look at this.
You kill baby! You kill baby! You kill baby! You kill baby!
You are a racist. No, you are a war criminal. You are a war criminal. You are a war criminal who spews hatred. You are disgusting. And you destroy my religion. You destroy my religion with your hatred. You be in The Hague. You are a racist, war criminal, and you're hurting me.
Now, Medea, I don't know about you, but my impression from watching that clip was that Ben Gvir's bodyguards were not protecting him from you, but were protecting you from him. They were like, don't let him get anywhere close to Medea. Was that the impression you had as well? I mean, that was extraordinarily aggressive behavior on the part of this character.
Absolutely. I think if it hadn't been for his bodyguards, he would have come over and punched me. I mean, the guy is really out of control. We see his horrific policies in Israel. And then it was just, we didn't know where he was going to be. And so to just come upon him, I knew he was in the building, but we didn't know where he was. And so to find this guy in the halls of our Congress, that he's having meetings and going from office to office, it's just so offensive. I mean, this is supposed to be the people's house. And to have him feel this sense of ownership of our Congress and coming in there with his bodyguards, it was just really horrific. So I was glad to be able to find him and be able to confront him.
And I should have clarified this, just in case people aren't sure about this man's status in the Israeli government. He's the Minister of National Security. And my understanding is that there was a time that he was considered to be a terrorist by the standards of Israel under Israeli law. But he has now gravitated to the so-called mainstream. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And, in our halls of Congress, they invite war criminals on a regular basis. When Gallant was the Secretary of, quote, Defense, but we'd say offense in Israel, he came to the U.S. Congress and had meetings in those very offices. And of course, Netanyahu has come 3 times, including the last time where he didn't even come to meet with the White House. He came to meet with members of Congress. So, we are just horrified that these people have such access to our, quote, elected officials.
Right.
Well, they are elected. They don't represent us.
They unfortunately do speak on our behalf. Yes. So that first clip I showed, I should have mentioned, was, I believe that was last year. It was at a time when Joe Biden was still in office. And of course, from north of the border and from many vantage points, we're looking at what's happening in the United States to Palestinian solidarity activists. And it looks like there's been a very serious escalation in the suppression of Palestinian solidarity activism and dissent generally against the government's policies. Have you yourself seen that? Have you experienced that in your own activism, that there has been a serious escalation in the suppression of dissent under the Trump administration? Or have you more or less experienced a continuity of suppression in your own work?
Oh, no, it has escalated tremendously. I mean, Codepink, the organization that I'm with, is constantly being slapped with lawsuits saying that we are supporting Hamas, lawsuits saying that we're anti Semitic, that we did this, that we did that. And it drains a lot of energy and resources from our organization. And then we are constantly being accused now of being paid for by the Communist Party of China. And that has been something that these members of Congress somehow got these talking points. And when we confront them, they say, you are paying, you are in the pay of the Communist Party of China. We look at them and we say, you are so insane. We have no affiliation, not one penny, but you are the ones taking money from a foreign government. And that is through AIPAC. You are representing Israel, not the United States. And there are calls, several now, from important members like the heads of intelligence committees to have the Attorney General investigate us for ties to the Chinese Communist Party. So, in the beginning we laughed about it and thought it was funny, but now we realize that it's not funny, that this is just part of their larger picture of going after all of our colleagues in different organizations, the poor students that have been expelled from their universities, the people who have lost their jobs, their incomes, their livelihoods. This level, this escalation of not just saying that we support Hamas, but of the attacks about anti-Semitism. I mean, there's a woman who joined us in the halls of Congress one day, and they have accused her of tugging on the Israeli flag that a woman was wearing, and they are raking her through the coals, taking her to civil court, to federal court, charging her with hate crimes. I mean, it is terrible, and she did nothing. So yes, they look for anything they can do to charge us, and they love these lawsuits.
It's really interesting because when you look at recent polling in the United States, it's like the government's attitude towards the crisis in Palestine and the suffering being inflicted upon Palestinians and public opinion are like two ships diverging. And I want to draw your attention in particular to a quite eye-popping poll, I think, that was just published by Data for Progress. They asked U.S. voters, likely voters, a number of questions relating to the genocide in Palestine. And one of those questions was, do you believe Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people living in Gaza? And this was the result. So as you can see there, in August 2025, this was the very beginning of August that the poll was done. They found that 47% of likely voters said that Israel is, in their view, committing genocide, and only 33% said no, 20% were not sure. And this, as you can see from this graphic, was a significant increase over April 2024, the last time this question was asked, when the percentage of likely voters who thought Israel was committing genocide was 39%. And so, almost every time I share polls like this with our audience, someone asks Medea, it surprises me to get the question, but then again, I can kind of understand where it's coming from. They ask, why does it matter what people think? Because the political elite don't care about our opinions. And I'm curious to know what your response to that is, and also what your view is about the overall shift in public opinion in the United States, what you've seen from your vantage point in that regard.
Well, on a very anecdotal basis, I'm in Los Angeles now, and we were walking through the streets of heavily trafficked areas yesterday doing a march. And the response was beautiful. I mean, all kinds of people just pouring out to give us the high five and honk. And the negative where I could count on my hand. Other polls, the Gallup poll recently was astounding to see that the support for Israel was at its lowest in 25 years since they started doing this polling, and that among Democrats, only 8% supported Israel's policy on Gaza. 8%. That is really amazing. So public opinion has shifted tremendously. And of course, even when they do it and break it down by age segment, young people in the Republican Party by the majority of young people in the Republican Party now don't support Israel. And so does it matter? Yes, it matters. And we've just seen that in a vote in Congress when Bernie Sanders has put forward these resolutions blocking certain weapons to Israel. The first time he did it, there were 19 senators who agreed with him. The second time it actually went down because of the backlash that some of those senators got from their pro-Israel constituents, from AIPAC lobby groups. But the third time he did it, which was just recently, it was 27 senators. And that's the majority of Democrats in the Senate. And so people would say, why isn't it 99% of the Senate? Well, I agree, it should be. But to get the majority of Democrats in the Senate to want to stop. In this case, they were assault weapons and 1,000-pound bombs. That, would never have happened a year ago. Never, ever, ever, ever in my wildest dreams would I think we'd get that low number of senators. So it is changing, and that's changing precisely because of public opinion changing. And I want to give you another example, which is that the majority of the freshmen in our Congress are every year supposed to go to Israel during their first break in August. It's kind of a ritual. In fact, one of the ex-Congress people called it a congressional Hajj. And so here it comes this summer, and they feel the pressure that AIPAC puts on them and that their party leadership puts on them. Because let's be clear, the party leadership of both parties continue to support Israel. And so it seems like the majority of these freshmen are taking this AIPAC-funded trip to Israel. They were there this week. The Republicans sat with big grins on their faces next to Netanyahu. The Democrats haven't put out one picture of them with a official in Israel. And in fact, the Democrats haven't even so far leaked the names of the Democrats who were in Israel. And when you look at their Twitter feeds, the Republicans are saying, oh, we're at the Western Wall, we're at this, we're at that. The Democrats aren't even saying anything. In fact, they're tweeting as if they're not in Israel. So what does this say? It says they, on one hand, feel the pressure to go. On the other hand, they feel the pressure from their constituents, and they're embarrassed that they're there. So this is a breaking point, and they can't keep doing this for very long because it's such a contradiction. And I think the change in public opinion is really absolutely critical.
One of the more astonishing developments in that regard, I thought, was Marjorie Taylor Greene called what Israel is doing to the Palestinians a genocide. A Republican, a dyed-in-the-wool supporter of the MAGA movement. And then you've seen, these very influential figures in the MAGA movement like Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson, quite stridently condemning Israel. Have you seen more of a shift within the Republican caucus in the Congress? Are there others who've come out and who have been, prepared to hold Israel to account, at least rhetorically, for what it's doing to Palestinians?
This is a dike that is ready to break, but it hasn't yet, and it's quite remarkable that it hasn't. And it's not just because they're afraid of alienating donors. Some of them have real these fanatical religious beliefs about Israel. But I think the most important thing is that they're afraid of Donald Trump, and they're waiting for him to change. So there is one Republican member of Congress, Thomas Massie, who's been very anti-AIPAC openly. In fact, he gave an interview with Tucker Carlson that he said every member of the Republican Party has an AIPAC babysitter who they have to check with before they decide how they're going to vote on something. And he has really broken with Trump on this. And the response is Trump is putting his own money into primarying, meaning finding somebody to take Thomas Massie's seat and try to get him out of Congress. So that puts real fear into the Republicans. On the other hand, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is playing a very, very careful calculated role. And what she is doing is saying that she doesn't come out and trash Donald Trump. She says the Republican Party is losing its base by not taking a stand on this, and that the fact that they are so much America first, but it really is Israel first, means that they are not going along with the beliefs of their constituents. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the rise now. She has millions and millions and millions of followers. And she just did a tweet and an interview in which she said, yes, AIPAC is now using me to fundraise. And I say to AIPAC, bring it on, because you're going to lose this one. So this is a real split. And as you said, her calling it genocide, she is the first Republican to call it a genocide. But she is representing the MAGA base of the Republican Party. So this is going to have to change. They can't have all of these Republicans continuing to say, yes, let's send billions of dollars more of bombs to Israel. Yes, let's keep starving the people of Gaza and get away with it. She's calling it starvation. She's calling it genocide. And I would say in the next couple of months, we're going to see a lot more Republicans that are going to agree with her.
So I'd like to take you back to this poll. There was another question I thought was quite eye-popping. And this question was, do you support or oppose the Israeli government blocking the delivery of food and medical supplies into Gaza? The mere fact, by the way, that this question is asked is really kind of a sad commentary on Western society. But the results were as follows. As you can see, all likely voters, 52% said they strongly oppose the blocking of food and medical supplies. 19% said they somewhat oppose. 11% didn't have a view or express one. 12% said they somewhat support, and 6% said they strongly support. So 18% said they either strongly or somewhat support the blocking of aid. Almost 1 in 5. And I just draw your attention before I ask you a question about this, Medea, that there was a quite significant partisan divide. But even the Republicans, 62% said they either strongly or somewhat oppose the blocking of aid. So I suppose that too is a good sign, relatively speaking. But my question to you is this: as an activist, I just find it appalling that anybody would say they support this, especially strongly. Any kind of support is just mind-blowing. As an activist, do you kind of write those people off and think, look, these are not people you can reason with? There's no point in my investing my time and energy in trying to open their eyes? Or do you think that even those people who would take such an astonishing position with respect to a basic question of human decency, that we as activists should be trying to appeal to them, appeal to their conscience and their just basic, humanity?
Absolutely. I think we have to appeal to them. And especially in the U.S. context where Trump is saying, I don't like seeing these pictures of starving children. This is not good. We've got to do something about it. Of course, his idea of what to do about it is to fund this Gaza, quote, humanitarian foundation, which is just a horrific mercenary-led death trap. But the fact that he is expressing that, and we're seeing AIPAC supported members of Congress now coming out and saying, we've got to do something about this catastrophe. We can't let children starve. And even those fanatical Zionist Christians, they have to feel bad about starving children. So I think that, yes, you are right. We cannot write anybody off at this point. And I think the fact that that poll has to be asked, like you said, is just so sad. But it is a moment that we can gather more support for changing U.S. policy. On the other hand, their talking points, especially among Republicans, is now that it is the UN that is blocking this aid. And Hamas that won't let the aid get to the people. So we have a whole nother layer of discussions because they're saying, yes, we want to get that aid. And that's why we need to fund this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And instead of just 4 distribution points, we're now going to increase it to 12 distribution points or whatever it is. And that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, these UN agencies don't want to work with it. And that's a terrible thing. We should all be working together. So, we have to then try to unpack that and prove that it is Israel indeed that is blocking the aid. But they are at the point of saying, yes, we should get more aid in.
Yeah, and one of the last things I want to talk about is the media in the United States. When we look at these numbers, we need to bear in mind that Americans are living in a highly propagandized environment, particularly, not just Americans, of course. This is true throughout the West. It's certainly true in Canada. When it comes particularly to the question of Zionism and Israel and Palestine. And yet you see these numbers, which is really quite something. I'm wondering, in your experience as an activist, within the past 6 months or so, have you seen, in the United States in particular, a dramatic shift in the media, the corporate media coverage of what's happening in Palestine?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, let's recognize that the shift in public opinion happened despite the mainstream media, and that the mainstream media is now catching up in the sense that they are having to show the pictures of the starving children. I mean, the Washington Post put out a list of the thousands of children that have been killed. Quite amazing to see that in the mainstream paper. And then Bernie Sanders printed it out and introduced it into the congressional record. You see, long after it was useful, these reports should have been done, 16 months ago or more, coming out and talking about a very detailed, quote, expose about how Netanyahu could have ended this war a long time ago, but it extended him because of his own personal issues. And they had to interview 115 people to get to that conclusion, something that we knew without that kind of an expose. But yes, they are talking about it. But as I said, they put it in the context. For example, the starvation, they'll have one op-ed talking about how Israel is blocking these thousands of trucks. And then they'll have another one saying, no, it is the UN that is doing it. So they're still trying to play both sides, and they are still not wanting to let go of this attachment that they have to Israel.
And have you yourself and your colleagues at Codepink found that the media is more amenable to giving you a voice, or are they still more or less blackballing you? How do you feel their attitude towards Codepink is nowadays?
It's interesting, Dimitri. I was thinking the other day about our opposition to the Iraq War and then all the years that we were protesting the Iraq War. We used to be on mainstream media. I used to be on Fox News even. In fact, Fox News liked to have us on when Obama was president because they always liked, different voices trashing the president. But now I have not been on mainstream media for years now. I think that our voices are still very hard to get in the media. Now, there are many other people who they see as more, quote, legitimate, former members of the military, people that are higher up in sort of the Jewish religious community, that kind of thing. And their voices are getting out, and that's a good thing. But the activists are still marginalized. And even though our opinion does reflect the general opinion, and even though our positions have always been right, I mean, I've been an anti-war activist since the Vietnam days, and I would say that every position I've taken has been the right position, whether it's saying don't invade Afghanistan, don't invade Iraq, don't overthrow the government of Libya, don't keep fueling the war in Ukraine. Our positions have always been the right ones. But they don't like to hear our voices in the mainstream media.
Since you raised the Vietnam War, I was born in that era. I wasn't quite old enough to be participating in those protests, but I remember them. And people often lament to me about the sorry state of the anti-war movement in the West. Do you see a resurgence of the anti-war movement? Do you see the kind of fire being kindled, ignited that you experienced back during the Vietnam War era?
Well, it was very exciting being in London and seeing the huge demonstrations and how these groups really have the ability to mobilize despite the crackdown that the British government is doing. Here in the United States, I think the crackdown is even greater. And it means that so many of our friends are afraid to come out. And they say, we love what you're doing, but we're afraid to be out on the streets. I have a green card. I'm not a U.S. citizen. My mother's not a U.S. citizen. I work in this, particular industry. Whatever it is, there's so many people who support us but are afraid to come out, and that really affects our numbers. And it is, it means that people like myself, who are white, who are U.S. citizens, who are older, who don't have to worry about our jobs. I mean, I've been retired and I've always worked in, as an activist. We are the ones who really have to be out front on this. And being Jewish helps as well. So I think it does diminish our numbers, but we know that behind us are many more people than you actually see.
Well, I have the utmost admiration for the work of Codepink, Medea. I know that many, many people who watch our show feel exactly the same way, and we will continue to cover what you do and have tremendous appreciation for it. I thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and just know that we will not give up and we'll continue to be in the halls of Congress every single day as long as this genocide continues and until Palestine is free.
Inshallah. And this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Greece on August 10th, 2025.